We're an island nation, drawn to the sea that surrounds us. For many, it's a playground. For others, it's where we earn our living. But the sea's unpredictable. It can change in an instant. And when accidents happen, they happen very fast.
On the sea, you have to expect the unexpected. It will just turn around and bite you.
Mayday! Mayday! Help!
There to save our lives is a volunteer army of nearly 5,000 ordinary people.
When the pager goes off, we don't know what the shout is, where it is, how many people are involved. It could be anything.
Where do you feel the pain, Alex?
My back and my leg and my neck.
Stuart, just hold the boat!
I am so thankful that they came.
Things could have turned out to be a lot worse.
I've had people drown in front of me. Before we've got there, that person's gone.
Calm down, you're okay, pal.
Equipped with their own cameras,
My light flashing. That's mine.
the crews give us a unique insight into every call-out as only they see it. Speeding through the roughest weather, searching for people who may only have moments to live. For those who risk their lives, it has become a way of life.
The decisions we make on a lifeboat can all mean the difference between life or death.
Lying at the mouth of the Kingsbridge Estuary on the south coast of Devon is Sulam, a resort town with a proud seafaring history.
There aren't many harbours that you come into that look as beautiful as this place. Its biggest selling factor is sandy beaches and nice clear water. The harbour is made up of recreational, commercial fishermen, commercial water sports, paddle boards, canoes, kayak, everything. You name it, if it floats, it's pretty much been in here.
But by the autumn, the local fishing fleet can often have the sea to themselves. The Sulam Lifeboat crew have received a Mayday call, the highest level of emergency at sea. A fishing boat is in distress a mile offshore.
The initial comms were man overboard and that he's been caught under the water. You hear Mayday, a man overboard, it sort of pricks your ears up and you're thinking, all this stuff we've trained for, this is where it counts now.
Any delay on a Mayday call can mean the difference between life and death. In charge, second coxswain Cameron has a decision to make. Wait for crew member Kirsten, a junior doctor, or launch the lifeboat.
You're sort of like drastically working out, have I got enough crew to go to sea? Can I go now, or am I going to wait for the doctor? You know that you're going to need a doctor, but then if you wait longer, you get there and it's too late. The rest of the guys are on the boat looking at you and you're thinking, well, do I, don't I?
Cameron gambles and decides to wait for the doctor.
When I got to station, first thing I saw was Cam, who was like looking down at the street, and normally he like say hello to me or something friendly to start with, and he just went, "Get your gear, there's an unconscious fisherman," and I think that's all we knew at that time.
With Kirsten now on board, the crew pushed the Tamar-class lifeboat to its top speed of 25 knots in a race to reach the fishing boat.
Fishing's a very dangerous occupation, so they're used to taking risks. They're very good at looking after themselves, and I think often that's why when something goes wrong, it's gone wrong in a big way.
You're making comms to the Coast Guard, they've given you an update, he's now on deck. They've got him breathing, but he stopped breathing again.
The fisherman has been pulled back on board unconscious. His crewmates are trying to resuscitate him.
Worst case is you arrive and he's not breathing and you can't get him to breathe. We do our best for that not to happen, but you can't control that. Time is always against you when someone's been in the water. "25
minutes after the call came in, the crew spot the fishing boat. Kirsten and fellow volunteer James get aboard to make an immediate assessment of the casualty's condition.
As I got close to him and saw him properly, he was lying on his side and he just looked really sick. He looked grey, he looked washed out.
He was in and out of consciousness. You didn't get a huge amount out of him. He was bringing up seawater. You know when someone's not well, and he wasn't.
Although he's conscious, the fisherman's been underwater, deprived of oxygen for several minutes. He's also suffering serious injuries from being dragged across the deck by the fishing gear that pulled him under.
He was making a lot of effort to breathe. His heart rate was super high. We got some oxygen on him pretty much straight away. He needed equipment that we couldn't give on a lifeboat. Cam had said to me before, like, if you can, let's just walk him over and take him, you know, back into Salcombe. And I remember telling Coops, you need to tell him he's big sick and he needs to be immobilised and we need to get him out of here and quickly.
A Coast Guard helicopter has been scrambled, but it's coming from Newquay, over 50 miles away. The crew must now keep the casualties stable until it arrives.
Being underwater for that amount of time, drowning, not breathing, there are top-level sort of bad day things to happen. You're using every resource you possibly can.
Silas, the injured fisherman, was pulled overboard while laying crab pots with his best friend Jack.
We weren't quite family, but you could all but say he was, because I've known him since I was 3. We went to primary school together, we went to secondary school together. We did everything together, pretty much. He had his own little boat and wanted to learn, and I said that you come on with us and we'll teach you. We were nearly about to go home. Silas let the end weight go. The rope sort of come tight and it appeared to like attract round his hand. He got tangled up and he hit the deck and he was sliding out the door. And I'm still looking over the rail, froze, and he's looking at me with full eye contact. And the expression and the look in his eyes was, I'm never coming back. And then I watched him go out the door and he just disappeared into the blue. And Silas's wallet and boots popped up to the surface. And I was shouting, he's there, and then I sort of realised he wasn't there, it was just his Wellingtons. Suddenly, I could see his hand, and it come up over, and I thought, we've got him. And I was expecting him to start shouting, get me out of the water. That's what I was expecting. But I didn't expect him to be like that, dead, lying in the water upside down. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that at all.
Kirsten and James have been working to keep Silas stable for almost 10 minutes. Finally, the Coast Guard helicopter appears overhead.
When you see the helicopter arrive, it is a relief, because you know that they're paramedics and they carry much more equipment than what we do, and they'll be in hospital in half the time as what it would be for us to steam in and get them in an ambulance. It could give them the best chance to survive if they get up in a helicopter.
Although they've stabilised him, the crew need to get Silas urgent medical attention.
He just looked awful by the time they were wanting to winch him up. The winchman looked at him and he was like, we need to get out of here, we need to get out of here quick.
The plan at the time was that the helo was going to drop down their stretcher, we'd transfer him and he'd go up. Sadly, he took a bit of a turn for the worse, and both Kirsten and Reggie, the winchman, life over limb, and it was made clear that an immediate winch was necessary.
Silas has flown 30 miles to Plymouth to be treated for serious neck injuries and the effects of oxygen starvation.
You're on tenterhooks because you know you've done the best you can do, but the level of his injuries were just so severe, he needed to get to a hospital.
All Cameron can do now is wait to find out if his gamble to hold the lifeboat for Kirsten has paid off.
You hope that you made the right decision, you try your best, but until you hear that they're on the mend and that they're doing okay, you still don't, you're not resting on your laurels so much.
On arriving at hospital, the injured fisherman Silas was rushed into emergency surgery. His injuries were so severe, he was placed into an induced coma.
He came round and he just wanted to talk to me. I was ushered in quickly and relieved to hear him speaking and talking to me, even though he was sky high on morphine. It was a relief once I knew he was semi-okay.
I had a fractured neck. Obviously, as I went out the door, I must have fractured it then. It hit a bit of stainless steel and just knocked my vertebrae forwards and fractured my neck. I remember being under the water for a little bit, and then I must have got unconscious, just blacked out.
I think he came as close to dying as you'd ever want to come. You do feel like proud that you've done something that, actually might change the outcome of someone's life.
Well, I'm very grateful for what they did. If it wasn't for them being on the ball, I might not be here. It says on those YOLO t-shirts, you only live once, and my mate went, you need one that says YOLOT. You only live twice.
Making split-second life and death decisions at sea is part of the job for the 5,000 volunteers who guard the waters around the UK and Ireland.
Time is everything, from pager to the boat hitting the water to the scene itself. Each second counts.
Where do you feel the pain, Alex?
My back of my leg and my neck.
Your mind is racing straight away. Is there going to be people in the water? What's the state of the tide? Can I even get to where they are?
Decisions need to be made there and then, on the spot.
Take the stretcher. Give it to me.
And it's your decisions that ultimately result in somebody being rescued or somebody being lost.
Paramedics talk about the golden hour, but I mean, you have an hour because you're on land. But if you're at water and you have a chance of drowning, you're going to drown in a matter of seconds.
A second can always be the difference between life and death.
In its 143-year history, the crews at Marlborough Station on the Isle of Anglesey have amassed 37 awards for gallantry.
Hello. Hi, Rob. Hello, Bobby J.
Probably wouldn't call it a team. I'd probably call it more of a family.
Do they do extra large boys?
There's nothing that could break the bond that we've got. It really is a small community, and the lifeboat station's the big part of it.
Lying off the rugged northwest coast of Wales, the seas around Anglesey are peppered with rocky outcrops, which have wrecked many a ship over the years. And there's one place on the Marlborough Cruise patch which is more treacherous than most.
Dillis Island is a chunk of rock in the middle of the sea, 2 miles offshore, but it's notorious in the 1800s for shipwrecks. I've been on the island and it's pretty bleak. It's cold, it's exposed, there's no shelter from the wind, so it's not a nice place.
It has a refuge on it that's been there from the 1800s, and its purpose was to give survivors of shipwreck a location to shelter until help would reach them.
33-year-old Martin Jones has been on the crew here for 17 years. He and his wife Kerry have lived on Anglesey all their lives.
Lottie, does Dad go on the boat?
Yeah.
18-month-old Lottie is one of the newest additions to the community.
It's having a little one, it's made you look at life a bit more, more sensitive. Makes you think about everything, really, running down to the boat.
There is always that risk that this time they might not come back, but it's what he loves to do, so we all just live with it.
The winter months in Marlborough are some of the most challenging for the lifeboat crews. As temperatures plummet, Marlborough Station receives an emergency call from the Coast Guard.
So we've got two overdue kayakers. They launched from Fleetwood.
A worried family member has dialed 999 after 2 kayakers failed to return from a trip out to sea. It's been nearly 4 hours since they set off.
Yeah, good. Is everybody clear? Going to go out there and investigate?
5 minutes after the call, the station's 32-ton Tamar class lifeboat is launched.
The first information we got at the station was that it was an overdue kayak. We get them quite frequently, where perhaps people have come back to shore and forgotten to call the Coast Guard to say they've arrived back. We thought it would be a quick search of the area, find somebody putting their kit away on the shoreline.
There is one kayak, I repeat, one kayak, which is a double kayak.
An update from the Coast Guard. An upturned kayak has been spotted drifting 1.5 miles out at sea.
2 persons, possibly in water.
Still thinking about recovery from the water. Yeah. So I don't know how long they've been in the water, but we'll try to see what I'll go in if needed, yeah? Thank you.
When you find out that they're not actually with the craft, it changes your train of thought. A cold day in February, the seawater temperature, it's going to be freezing cold. Their chance of survival has reduced massively.
A biting easterly wind has also plunged the air temperature below freezing. In these conditions, hypothermia can take hold within minutes.
Cramp sets in, your body functions are reduced, you can't move your arms, your legs properly, and you literally just become a floating mass that isn't able to help themselves.
Yeah, just have a think about if we've got to recover somebody from the water, get some blankets out.
We didn't actually know what time or at what point they got into difficulty. Were we looking for people treading water, trying to stay afloat, or were we looking for potentially 2 bodies? We just did not know.
Can we get some beds up here, please, guys?
2 persons in the water, 13-year-old.
How's that 13-year-old?
We got the information that it was a father and his 13-year-old son, and that was a real kind of game changer for me. Big lump in my throat, felt instantly emotional. I've got a 10-year-old son myself. I'm not the only parent on that boat. And for everybody, it got very, very serious, very, very quickly.
On the morning that Joe and Paul went out kayaking, I just had this foreboding sense of ill feeling at them going. Sadly, I was proved right. I rang the mobile phone. It didn't even ring out, it just went straight onto answer phone. I was trying to make excuses for why I couldn't get hold of them. And then eventually, I couldn't justify making any more excuses. I rang the Coast Guard, and then I made my way to the beach. I was panicking inside.
Biscuit 2 on that. 140. 140 F-minus at 1.5 miles only run. Manager? Yeah, okay.
All the crew have to go on is that the upturned kayak was last seen around 4 nautical miles up the coast from Marlborough, just north of Dillis Island.
I was in the wheelhouse taking information over the radio. Josh, one of our junior crew members, I could hear him shouting at the top, "I've seen somebody."
I'd looked, and then I looked away, and then I looked back again, but something it just caught my eye that without the binoculars that there was somebody on the island.
1, 2, 3.
fastest way to get to the island is with the small Y-class boat. As Martin and Josh approach, two figures appear.
Bear with me. Watch yourself. Get contact with the bow, box. Okay, yeah, Josh. Right. What's your name, mate? Joe. Joe. I'm Martin, okay? What's your name, mate? Paul. Paul, right. Have you ingested water? Yeah. Yeah. I've swallowed quite a bit, yeah. You've swallowed quite a bit of water. And we're feeling really cold? Yeah. Right, okay. No, that didn't do that. You got no shoes or nothing, no, mate? No. Right. Came off. Came off. So I've got cold feet. Okay, mate. Follow my footsteps, don't come off the high stuff. Right, yeah. Slightly unconscious in the water, he's dragging me out. Right. I was falling asleep. You were falling asleep, were you? Yeah. Right, okay, mate.
Within minutes of talking to him, you could see that they'd both been through something really, really traumatic.
Right. Take your own time, take your time.
Wet, cold and exhausted, the boy and his father have spent over 2 hours exposed to the elements on the island.
Okay. It was by far the most severe case of hypothermia I've definitely seen. Yeah, everything. The shakes, the clamminess, the blue lips.
Josh, ask for the chopper.
We needed to get these casualties off here. I need to get them to professional medical assistance.
I think the plan is to evacuate by helicopter. We're going to get you seen to hospital.
Paul and his son Joe were off the coast of Marlborough when their kayak started taking in water and capsized.
We were about half a mile from Unistillas, so obviously that was closest, so I said, if you straddle the boat, I'll try and kick it towards the island.
After half an hour making no progress, and with hypothermia setting in, they abandoned the kayak and tried to swim to the island instead.
We got in the water, and Joe was quite upset. He said, I think we're going to die. And I was convinced we both were at that point because of the cold. He said, again, I think we are going to die, Dad. But if we die, the last thing I want to do is give you a kiss. So I gave him a kiss and I told him I loved him, and we set off to swim. The waves were breaking on me and I was taking on quite a lot of water, and obviously the sea temperature was what it was, and I'd been in there for quite a long time by now. My arms were starting to fail, and I was on my back, and I remember feeling that this is really warm and really peaceful, and just went to sleep.
He's a paramedic, okay? He's going to come down and he's going to assess you.
You can swallow on a seawater, if so, a lot. Yeah. Roughly how many full mouthfuls? I thought I was going to drown. You thought you were going to drown? What about you, little man? Thought you were going to drown? Yeah, good effort getting your dad, yeah?
He saved my life,
I saw he was like unconscious, so I jumped back in the sea, swam to him, carried him to that island, then gave him CPR and resuscitated him.
I don't remember how I got from the side of the water up to the tower. I asked Joe how I got there and he said, I put you on my back and I carried you.
Don't you go to sleep on me, okay?
He was just on my shoulder, so like, because the rocks were about 4 or 5 foot high each one, I'd carry him up one, then I'd just like have a little tiny rest because it's quite tiring. Then I'd just keep on carrying up as many as I could, then we got to shelter.
Without a shadow of a doubt, Joe saved my life that day. When he thought that he was looking at death, the fact that he wanted to do that as a last action, I think was lovely.
After 2.5 hours on the island, Paul and Joe are flown to hospital in Bangor to be treated for shock and severe hypothermia.
If we hadn't spotted them when we had, then there was still a huge risk to their lives. They were both hypothermic. It was getting later in the afternoon. They would have just got colder and colder, and ultimately, yes, they were still gravely in danger.
It's probably the closest I've seen to life being lost. If Joe hadn't been as strong as he was in doing what he did and swimming back out to his dad, Paul wouldn't be around today.
To learn that the 13-year-old son had actually gone out and rescued his dad, given his father CPR on the shore because he'd lost consciousness and thought that his own dad was dying in front of him. To hear a son ask for one last kiss, one final goodbye from his own dad is just, it's heart-wrenching.
When I saw that they were alive, it was just such a relief. I don't know what would have happened to my family if Joe hadn't have done what he'd done that day. But I do know that he's got the right moral compass, and I'm very proud of him for that.
Most of the UK and Ireland's 238 lifeboat stations lie on the coast. But the busiest is Tower on the River Thames. Annually, over 10 million tourists, commuters and city dwellers use this stretch of water. And the crew at this station deal with over 500 call-outs a year.
5, 4, 3, 2, contact!
The Thames is a very unique body. The footfall we've got in London being the capital city, I mean, people flock there in their thousands on a daily basis. We've got an awful lot of commercial users with a high volume of passengers. We've got a lot of people on the embankments, on the bridges. The river brings so much life and so much to the city, but if you don't respect it, it can take everything away from you as well.
Guarding 15 miles of river, Tower Lifeboat Station floats on a pontoon alongside Waterloo Bridge.
Most of our jobs are people recovered from the water. We've got all the bridges through our patch. People get on top of them, young lads showing off. Some people mean to go in there in the hope of ending it all. It's essential that we get there as quick as we can. If it's a person in the water, every second counts.
Everything about Tower Station is geared to getting on the water in the quickest time possible. It has a full-time crew on continuous duty, and they're equipped with the fastest boat in the fleet, the E-Class. With a top speed of 45 knots, it can reach any point in their patch within 15 minutes.
The Thames itself is equally as dangerous in a lot of senses as the west coast of Scotland in a howling gale, but it's a different type of danger. You've got a river that's trying to flow the passage that it's always flown for thousands and thousands of years, yet man has put in bridges and piers and all sorts of obstructions that change the dynamics of that river.
The reason we have to be there very quickly is because even in the height of summer, the River Thames is very cold. It also has a very deceptive flow rate. It is moving very quickly. At certain places it runs at 6 or 7 knots, which in land terms is around about 10 miles an hour. A great deal faster than you could ever swim.
In January, the water temperature of the Thames can drop as low as 8 degrees. The tower crew are called out. Over a mile downstream, a man has been spotted on scaffolding overhanging the river.
We have a launch time of 90 seconds, day or night. That's from the bell going, kitted up, ropes off, and engines in gear.
The crew pushed the 870 horsepower E-Class to maximum speed.
Time is critical. I've been on numerous jobs where we've been on scene before the person's jumped, and we've missed them. They've gone down 3 metres in front of us and never been seen again. I've had people drown in front of me, 50, 100 metres away. I've seen someone in the water and we've been going to them at full speed, and before we've got there, that person's gone.
The tide is going out fast, and at this stage the crew have no idea of the man's intentions.
On the way to a job like that, you're imagining, a fall from height. So I'm thinking it could be a spinal injury, what equipment we're going to use, how we're going to recover them, what the tide's doing, the dangers in that area.
The crew cover the mile in less than 3 minutes.
The thing was just unfolding as we arrived, and you could see the police boat was there, and they were sort of lighting up the scene a bit.
This guy again on the scaffolding building.
The police report that the man had been asked to leave a riverside pub. He's now clinging onto scaffolding over 30 feet above its beer garden.
Standing on the ledge, now trying to gain access to the 3rd floor.
Bill, did you get a search light? Arriving on scene, trying to locate the person. And I see sort of the corner of my eye, the security were pointing up to scaffolding on the side of the pub. And I was looking up and I see this figure. He's a long way up, 30, 40 foot in the air on the scaffold. The water was shallow, about 1 metre. There's like a scaffold pole sticking out there.
Sir, stay there.
You're thinking, if he goes down in that area, there is a good chance he's going to be impaled on that.
We board you. I don't think we've got step for the side of
You can board us. Yeah, come alongside, jump on, yeah, we got video.
The police want to approach the man to try and talk him down, but they can't reach him via the scaffolding, and their boat can't get under the building to the shore.
Where do you want to take you? Well, as close as you can get.
An officer boards the more manoeuvrable lifeboat to get in closer.
Yeah, and I'll keep on my deck.
We're limited in the position we were at to what we could do. We had the scaffold tube to one side where he obviously didn't want to hit that.
It's backing up and getting fucking good.
We had the concrete overhang of the beer garden to the other side. Then I also had to work out a distance if he was to fall where he would land, but be close enough that we could grab him as soon as possible.
Creeping into the riverbank, all the crew can do is prepare to react as fast as possible if the casualty falls or jumps.
You get that adrenaline of getting there and thinking what we're going to do, and then there can be a wait, and that wait can be longer and longer. The dynamics of the job can easily change, where they're moving, it's cold, there's a strong ebb tide. Every minute, everything's changing.
Sir, stay inside, there's someone on your right, someone on your left.
Suddenly, a resident emerges from a flat.
Look to your right!
You could see his startled look. You would never expect that in a million years. Someone literally stuck to the side of the wall of your flat at that height.
He's going in the flat!
He runs sort of out from his balcony around to his kitchen window, and he tried to coax the lad in.
And the Coast Guard, Roger. Someone from a flat is trying to get through their window. Stand by if he does go in.
The ledge must have been no more than 3 or 4 inches that he was balancing on.
Phil, if he goes with that side recovery. Stand by if he does go in.
Is that person going to get themselves to safety? Are they going to fall? Or is it going to happen now in front of us?
He's coming. Male in water.
I remember saying to him, here he comes.
and it's in slow motion. You can almost hear him, and then you hear that splash.
The casualty has narrowly missed the scaffolding pole, but now the crew have just seconds to get him before he's swept downriver in the darkness.
Come here! Come here! Swim to me! Swim to me, give me your hand!
Contact! The boat was there within 3-4 seconds. We had hands on him, and then he was recovered into the lifeboat.
Gently, just gently with it.
It's all right.
Normally, we would have taken some greater care, let's say, at recovering them, but we didn't have the time for that. Purely where his location was, seconds later, we would have been swept underneath the overhang of the beer garden. It was 4 knots of tide on the ebb tide, and he would have gone underneath. There was no possibly have avoided it. So we had to choose, basically, get him in or let him drown.
Check over and feel for any injuries. Okay. You wiggle your hand.
It's all right, it's all right, it's all right.
The other arm.
You're all right,
Don't move your head. Can you feel your feet? Toes? You can. We'll take you to the lifeboat station and we'll sort you out from there, okay? All right?
While the crew rush back to the lifeboat station, the resident who tried to intervene helps the police piece together the events of the night.
We were aware of flashing blue lights everywhere. Went out in the balcony and got a real shock to see a young guy hanging onto the side of our building just by our window, looking absolutely petrified. I started talking to him and tried to ask him whether he felt he could edge along the ledge a bit to get opposite the window we'd now opened. The next minute I knew he just went straight off backwards off the ledge and literally fell straight down. I just remember a huge noise when he hit the water and a yell. It was a frightening sound, to be honest. And they immediately pulled him out, and in what seemed just like seconds, that boat was gone. I guess it just reminds me what a great job the lifeboats do and how often people seem to get themselves in difficulty in the Thames, right in the middle of London.
Have you got any pain anywhere in your body?
Despite falling nearly 30 feet into a few meters of water, the casualty appears to be uninjured.
I expected him to have some serious spinal injuries, but by some miracle, by a few scratches and grazes, he was fine. Amazing. He fell off in the fetal position, backpack leading the way, went in the water, and because it was so shallow, I don't think he completely submerged all of his body at the time. I think he sort of rocked on his backpack under the water.
All right. How much you had to drink tonight? You had quite a few of you?
To fall from that height, to miss that scaffolding pole that was sticking out 6 foot away from you, and not to get swept under the pier, it could have been so much worse.
At the lifeboat station, the casualty was given the all clear and allowed to go.
He was staggeringly lucky. There were so many ways of him getting seriously injured, and he avoided them all, which was, I'm very pleased. Like, we always want a positive outcome.
Sulam Lifeboat Station's position over 2 miles up the Kingsbridge Estuary shelters it from the worst of the Atlantic storms. But every time the crew is called out, they face a hidden danger, a large sandbank lying in the mouth of the estuary.
The Sulam bar is very treacherous. I mean, crossing the bar can be one of the most hazardous things of our job. It takes a very skilled coxswain to get that boat in over there on a rough day.
The destructive power of the bar was brought home just before dawn on the morning of the 27th of October 1916, when the local crew launched to a wrecked schooner 4 miles along the coast.
This is the old lifeboat station, so they would have come out here, rolled her down and then pulled her out and rowed out to sea.
Volunteer James Cooper's great-grandfather was one of the 15 lifeboatmen who headed out in a force 9 gale that day.
But in those days, it was just open boat, sat down inside and rowing. It had no protection from the elements at all. Rain coming down on you, sea over the top. yeah, pretty grim.
When the lifeboat reached the schooner, they discovered her sailors had already made it safely to shore. Returning home after 3 hours at sea in terrible conditions, and just a few hundred meters from the safety of the estuary, the lifeboat capsized in the huge surf breaking on the bar. Only 2 of the 15 lifeboatmen survived.
My great-grandfather was washed up on the rocks there, and they had to pull him back up, and then they carried him along the shore and back over to Rickham Farm. The boat was completely smashed to pieces, so there's bits of the boat which was recovered by other boats, and then the crew were scattered all over the place, and they weren't all found straight away. You can't really comprehend how bad it must have been, because, you know, that's a lot of men from the town gone. Yeah, you take your hat off to them, you know, because that's some bravery. That's when, as they say, men were men, because they were, you know, different sort of breed, I think, in those days, different breed.
A clear March day. The Sulam Lifeboat is called to one of the most urgent emergencies at sea. 15 miles out in the English Channel, a boat is on fire.
When there's a fire in a fishing boat, it has to be a very fast launch, because life is definitely an immediate risk.
The Sulam crew aim to launch their Tamar-class lifeboat in 9 minutes. Today they do it in 4.
Any boat that's got a fire on is a worst nightmare, you know, because normally you've got a load of fuel on board, you've got batteries, you've got electrical kit, and like an oven really, aren't you? Everything else is going to burn and you've got nowhere to go.
If that fire's not put out, they're all going to have to abandon ship, and then it could be a search and rescue, not just a rescue.
Even at top speed, it will take the crew up to an hour to cover the 15 miles to the boat. To make matters worse, a 20-mile-an-hour wind has whipped up a large swell.
The conditions when we were heading out to that boat were fairly choppy, and it got rougher and rougher as we approached them.
50 minutes after launching, the crew spot the stricken boat, the Pamela Jill. The fire is out, but the boat is now at the mercy of the sea.
The boat lost all power, so it was adrift. The waves were rocking her quite considerably from side to side. At points, you know, it was crashing into the swell, and, you know, there's plenty of spray going over the boat as well.
The fishing boat's skipper then radios in with some alarming news.
As we got closer, we received the information that one of the crew wasn't very well. So that made the decision for me. I had to put a casualty care trained crew member, Ian, on board the beam trawler.
But between Ian and the casualty stands the increasing swell, rolling the helpless trawler with every wave.
We asked the skipper to pull his beams in, but he couldn't, obviously, because the engine was down. The beams stick out at least 20 foot. That was going to be our main obstacle when getting alongside.
Ian has only one option: to jump from the bow of the lifeboat onto the deck of the heaving fishing boat.
There was quite a bit of height difference between the boats because they were pitching so much. One boat was rolling up while the other one was going down. It was quite an awkward crossing. One slip, you could be down between both boats crashing together. As soon as the skipper thought it was time to go, he would say, right, go now, and jump.
Before he can tend to the injured casualty, Ian must make sure the engine room fire is fully out.
You could see where the exhaust ran up through the wheelhouse of the boat, and it was encased in a steel case which was still glowing red, and the whole boat stunk of smoke. But I didn't want to get in there and start digging things open, because letting more air in could have caused that fire to start again.
The casualty is conscious, but after fighting the fire is suffering from severe smoke inhalation.
He was being violently sick. He was complaining of a headache and chest pains. We had to make sure he didn't have burns in his throat as well, because he had been very close to the fire.
They need to evacuate the casualty as fast as possible. But in these conditions, the crew can't get him on board the lifeboat. The only way to get him the 50 miles to hospital now is by helicopter.
What we had to do in the meantime was just get the fishing boat under tow, so get a tow line across, secure the tow line, and pull the fishing boat at the right speed and in the right direction for the helicopter to get the safest approach for the winchman.
The crew must tow the 260-ton dead weight of the trawler at a constant speed to give the winchman any chance of landing on it.
The helicopter arrived, took a couple of turns. I think they were sussing out what was going on. The boat was moving so much that they were just waiting and waiting and waiting until they got the hang of the movement, and then bang, he was down.
Within 90 seconds, the injured fisherman is being winched back up, ready for the flight to hospital.
Hats off to, the helicopter crew. It was pretty impressive, particularly with all that rigging still out, and the conditions.
Now the casualty is finally en route to hospital in Plymouth. The Sulam Lifeboat starts the long tow of the Pamela Jill back to shore.
There is relief when that happens, when they're in the helicopter and they're on the way to hospital. We turned around and towed the fishing vessel up towards Brixham.
49-year-old first mate Sean was treated for smoke inhalation and released from hospital the next day.
Was thick smoke, yeah. So I went outside to get me breath, obviously. And I ripped the rest down, extinguished the fire. They could have easily got out of hand with wooden steps, wood cupboards. It would have spread, yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, my friend. Yeah, we was very, very lucky. Very lucky indeed.
If he hadn't gone into that fire and ripped all the cowling off and made a hole in that exhaust tunnel, that boat would have sunk. It would have burnt into the wood, and I think they would have gone down.
Over 400 miles away in the far northwest of Cumbria is the small community of Silloth. Their lifeboat station only had 10 call-outs last year.
If we start locally, the changes that are happening now is the main bank off of the slipway is moving down. That could cause a problem for us launching at low water.
Helm Steve is the most experienced crew member here, with 30 years volunteering under his belt.
Generally through the Solway, the tide gets up to about 4 knots, but up sort of past Annan, it's up to 10 knots, which is dangerous for anybody, even in a fast boat.
The Silloth patch covers the Solway Firth, an estuary leading out to the rough and unpredictable Irish Sea. It's infamous for fast tides and shifting sandbanks.
On a day like today, the Solway is beautiful. It's actually set in an area of outstanding natural beauty, and you can see why, but it hides the dangers. It's constantly changing, very dynamic. The sandbanks move, the channels move, the depth of the channels change. It is said that parts of the Solway, the tide comes in quicker than a man can run.
The sea can flood in at over 8 miles an hour off Silloth. The power of the water constantly shifting the local sandbanks, leaving large parts of the Solway uncharted.
I don't think anybody ever knows the Solway. You can catch anybody out. Anybody who thinks they know the Solway, they can be caught out.
A still February day. An emergency call comes in to Silloth Lifeboat Station. Within Within 6 minutes of being paged, the crew have their B-class inshore lifeboat on the water.
The only information that we had was that there was a lady trapped in her vehicle. She was about 6 miles down the coast, and we didn't know how far out she was.
A car, driven onto a local beach, has been swamped by the fast-rising tide, trapping the driver.
At that point, we find out she's a non-swimmer. The sense of urgency goes through the roof.
Every job we get is time critical to a degree, but for a non-swimmer who ends up in the Solway with the tides there is, then seconds count.
To make matters worse, today is a spring tide, when water floods into the estuary at its fastest and hits its highest level, rising over 30 feet at a rate of 6 feet an hour.
The force of the water is going to be pushing the car, so the car is likely to be moving. Is she in the water? Is she still attached to the vehicle in some way? And you are hoping and praying you're going to be there in time.
Since the call came in, the waters in the Solway have already risen over 1.5 feet. Even at a top speed of 35 knots, the crew are struggling to beat the tide.
You just want to be there. You want time to fast forward, and you to be there, and you to spot this person and get them in the boat, but you can only go as fast as the boat will go.
And now they face another delay. Between them and the casualty lies one of the Solway's most treacherous stretches.
You don't want to be inside the shore side of Beckfoot Buoy. It's full of large and small rocks. Some of them are big van-sized.
The crew must navigate through the huge rocks just under the surface as fast as they dare.
Hitting these rocks or the boulders risks damage to our boat or the engines, and then we're no good to anybody. We need to go slowly, which you don't want to do. You want to be there.
Suddenly, just as they clear the rocks, they spot a figure in the water.
When she phoned the Coast Guard, the water was, up to the height of the window, and we got there 12 minutes, and the water was over and on the roof of the car. She was clinging on for her dear life.
It was just quite shocking how far she is off the coastline, and how quickly the tide had come in.
When we got closer to the casualty, I actually recognised who the casualty was. Caroline's often on the beach. 9 times out of 10, she'll be with her husband, who is severely disabled.
The priority now is to find out if the casualty's husband is trapped in the submerged car.
I looked at Steve and said, "Shall I go in?" And he just gave me the nod, and I just went straight in. I got hold of the inside lip of the bonnet. The windows were open, so I'm giving the car a good sweep. I've got my arm right in as far as I could possibly go. I can feel the headrest of the front seat, the passenger seat. You are dreading the possibility of touching somebody. Was very, very, very pleased there wasn't anybody, and that was a big relief.
Having confirmed there's no one inside the vehicle, Andy swims the casualty back to the boat. As she's brought aboard, her car is completely engulfed by the tide.
If we'd got any later than we did, we would then be looking for a non-swimmer in the water. When we're talking about time-critical incidents, this was tight.
Caroline had driven onto the beach at low water searching for her lost dog. But as she tried to get back to shore, her car was caught on rocks.
The tide seemed to just come from nowhere, quite fast and furious it was, pouring in. I managed to dial 999 and they put me through to the Coast Guard, and she said to me, "Can you get out of the car?" I said, "Yeah, of course I can get out of the car." And when I tried to open the door to get out, I couldn't open the door. When I looked out of the window, water was up the side of the door. After I had said that to the lady, we got cut off. I thought the only thing I can do now is get myself onto that roof, and hopefully the tide won't go any higher than the roof before I got rescued. The vehicle was starting to sway backwards and forwards, and it was very slippery up there. It was hard maintaining my position on the roof. I took one last look round. Everything looked so huge. I was miles away from the shoreline and there was nobody. And that was at that point when I felt really all alone, nobody here. And I didn't think that we were going to make it. It had reached that point where I was going to have to hit the water. I felt as though I heard something, and when I looked around, I could see the lifeboat heading towards me, and I felt a real relief.
We know subsequently that she was ready to go into the water. Over half a mile, tide running at 5 knots. A non-swimmer, no chance.
Minutes later, then it would have been a completely different outcome.
Caroline was treated for shock and hypothermia. Her missing dog made her own way safely back to shore.
I will be eternally and forever thankful to them all. If it wasn't for the split-second timing of those RNLI guys coming along at the right moment, because it was minutes really before things could have turned out to be a lot worse.
Back in Brixham, and after just 2 weeks laid up in harbour, the fire-damaged Pamela Gill is patched up and ready to set out to sea, with first mate Sean back on board.
She's back fishing again. All good, all healthy, and she lives to tell another tale. Stuff happens at sea, you just get on with it, you don't think about what's happened, you just think about where them blooming scallops are. I'll find you.
And 3 months after Joe pulled his dad unconscious from the water, the family are back on Anglesey.
Joe, good enough far, isn't it?
But when we came here...
I know the tide was right in here.
The tide was like there.
I know it was. Doesn't seem very far away, and yet, when you're stuck on it, and you're a bit cold, it might as well be the moon, wouldn't it? You can't get back without help.
You're still not quite big enough yet, Joe.
We've booked a holiday in Croatia. We would tend to do quite a bit of kayaking, but the water's warm, and we probably stay a little bit closer to the coast, eh?
Are we going to get into this vehicle somehow and find there's somebody stuck in there?
Any slight movement runs the risk of doing further damage.
Everybody was watching this woman kind of drowning in glorious technicolor.